But I wanted to talk about 9/11. Yesterday was 9/11. It was the 21st anniversary of it, if I'm doing my math right. And 9/11 was a crime. It was a crime against America perpetrated by this guy, Osama bin Laden, who, by the way, and this is something we need to keep in mind when we talk about Donald Trump, we didn't track down and kill bin Laden, and I'm not suggesting anybody should be killing Trump. Please don't draw that. But we didn't track down and kill bin Laden because he flew planes into the World Trade Centers on 9/11. We tracked him down because he incited it. He didn't even know the details of the operation. That's how tightly it was held by Mohammed Atta until after it was all done. He just financed it. He sort of was the puppet master, the guy behind it, much like Trump was the guy behind the attack on our Capitol on January 6th. But in any case, this was a crime against the United States by an individual person, a Saudi, apparently with the help of a lot of Saudi officials, and this more and more of this stuff has come out, the Saudi involvement in 9/11 and the 9/11 victims' families who are suing the Saudi government. It's like every year they get some new horrible revelation about some Saudi official who was helping out these hijackers as they were in the United States, helping them get flight school, helping them find places to live, helping them, just helping them in general. And I think, to this day, we don't really know the true story of this. But the bottom line is the government of Afghanistan had nothing to do with this. Yeah, they allowed bin Laden to be in their country, and they allowed him to have his little training camp where he'd run about 5,000, people through his basic training thing, for which they charged for, by the way. It was probably a scam. But it wasn't those people who flew the planes. The people who flew the planes were not the people who had gone through the training camps in Afghanistan. None of them. And they were not people who had any direct connection to bin Laden. It was Mohammed Atta, as I said earlier, who organized these people, and 17 of the 19 hijackers were Saudis. This was, by and large, an operation, a Saudi operation, whether it was official government Saudi operation or whether it was unofficial Saudi, operation with, government involvement. We still don't know, but we need to find out, frankly. But the bottom line is, we were not attacked by Afghanistan at all. And after 9/11, the government of Afghanistan reached out to George W. Bush and said, we will arrest bin Laden for you and turn him over to a third country for prosecution. We can't turn him over to America. Our people would not tolerate that. You're, an interested party. You're the aggrieved party. We're not going to turn him over to you because he hasn't been convicted yet. But we'll turn him over to any other neutral country that wants to try him. And George Bush said, no, I'd rather bomb the crap out of the second poorest country in the world, which is what he did. Afghanistan, when he bombed Afghanistan, the average per capita income in Afghanistan was less than $700 a year. The second poorest country in the world, behind Burkina Faso. And we killed hundreds of thousands of Afghans. And then George Bush lied us into attacking Iraq. And Iraq had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11. I mean, as I said, Afghanistan had nothing to do with it, but, bin Laden was living there. So at least there was some, weird little slice of rationale that he might have been able to come up with. And George W. Bush has never apologized for this. And to the best of my knowledge, only once has he been confronted. And here is that confrontation. Check this out.
Mr. Bush, when are you going to apologize for the million Iraqis that are dead because you lied? You lied about weapons of mass destruction. You lied about connections to 9/11. You lied about Iraq being a threat. You sent me to Iraq. You sent me to Iraq in 2003. My friends are dead. Joshua Castile. You killed people. You lied. You lied about WMDs. A million Iraqis are dead because you lied. My friends are dead because you lied. You need to apologize. Apologize. You need to apologize.
And that's, yeah. I think George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, Rumsfeld is dead, I think. Wolfowitz is still around. L. Paul Bremer is still around. I mean, these guys who were the architects of this lie, and the former Secretary of State, Colin Powell, he has already apologized. and his Lawrence Wilkerson, his chief of staff, who has been on this program many times, is very upfront about how badly they were lied to largely by Dick Cheney. But, you know, George W. Bush had, you know, essentially we were warned, shall we say. This is Cindy Sheehan back in, let me tell you the backstory. Back in 1999, when Governor George W. Bush of Texas was thinking of running for president, his family, his father and mother, hired a family friend, Mickey Herskowitz, who the family had known for decades. He was a writer, a professional ghostwriter. And I believe he had done some ghostwriting work for the family. I'm not certain. But they hired Mickey Herskowitz to write George Bush's autobiography, because you don't run for president without putting out an autobiography. It's just it's a kind of a requirement of the job. And Bush doesn't know how to write a book, and so they hired a ghostwriter. And Herskowitz had over 100 hours of taped conversations with George W. Bush. And he wrote the first draft. He didn't write the final draft. They took it away from him and gave it to somebody else because it wasn't sufficiently Slavish enough. It didn't kiss up enough to George and his family. But Mickey Herskowitz talked about this with a reporter later. And keep in mind, this was 2 years before George Bush became president, before the Supreme Court gave George Bush the White House in December of 2000. And this is Cindy Sheehan, whose son died in Iraq or in Afghanistan, I believe it was Iraq. This is Cindy Sheehan, a grieving mother, telling this story. Oops, here we go.
As a matter of fact, in interviews in 1999 with respected journalists and longtime Bush family friend Mickey Herskowitz, then Governor George Bush stated, "One of the keys to being seen as a great leader is to be seen as commander-in-chief. My father had all this political capital built up when he drove the Iraqis out of Kuwait, and he wasted it. If I have a chance to invade, if I had that much capital, I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to get everything passed that I want to get passed, and I'm going to have a successful presidency," end quote.
There you go. And she added, apparently my son never had a chance. This was planned even before he ran for president. And it was, he had these two wars which have cost us literally trillions of dollars, thousands of American lives, millions of Iraqi and Afghan lives, hundreds of thousands, maybe 1 million dead, and tens of millions, well, probably over 10 million in between the two countries, displaced, lives turned upside down, ruined. And the United States government has never apologized for this. There has never been any response to this. And George W. Bush and Dick Cheney have never apologized for this. So, when all this slavish 9/11 remembrance stuff was going on over the weekend, I kept waiting for somebody on the news to ask this question: when's Bush going to apologize?